All right, all right. This is going to be for you, Jay. Well, as you can see, they're excited to have you back.
I'm excited to be back. I was on a plane and I said, turn around, turn around. I got to come back. It's too much fun.
And I get to be on his coattails.
That's right.
Thank you.
I just so you know some background. I've known Jay. I mean, we look about the same age, but he's a lot older than me.
I am.
No,
I am.
He's actually not a lot older, but one of the most important influences in my life, not that you care about my life and you probably don't even know a lot about me, but I've been in direct marketing for almost 40 years, and I met Jay in the early 1980s. He was very involved in the newsletter business, and I was too. And,
I was very young, probably 20.
Yeah, you were younger than me then, and then somehow you got older than me. But you know, he defines what it is to be a mentor, and the reason why, you know, with Mike is kind of the same way. I think the three of us, if I have to say one thing, the three of us have in common in a big way. I don't have any tats, but you know. And I don't know, Jay probably has one on his butt, but I don't know.
I can't tell you where it is, but it's...
So the biggest thing, and I say this all the time, and I learned it from him at a very young age, that it's like those who did, this is my quote on his take, I'll give you his take in a second, but those who've done it have a responsibility to teach it. Those who've done it have a responsibility to teach it. Now, a lot of you are still in the middle of doing it. He did it. I mean, Mike could go off into the sunset if he wanted to, but now he's here for you because he's saying, look, I built this incredible business. I'm not in that business anymore, and I'm going to do it. And then what Jay adds to that, and he drills it into me all the time. On Sunday morning, I get a phone call from Jay. Reads my blog. I do my blog every Sunday morning, all the lessons I've learned, a lot from him. And he calls me, tells me how great the blog was. And then before that, I get off that call. At some point in that call, Jay says, you know, Brian, it's your moral responsibility to keep teaching this shit. Moral responsibility is the word he uses. And so, you know, and that's who he is. I mean, he doesn't have to do this. I don't have to do this either. But if you're not going to take what you learn and share it, it's the most fulfilling thing. And for me, we talked about technology, the most rewarding thing for me on a Sunday morning after I blog, and I get an email from like someone who's in their 20s or 30s who assumes I'm some, you know, old fogey dinosaur of some sort, and they're telling me that, wow, if I understand those fundamentals, which are in the book that you have, by the way, if I understand those fundamentals, I might actually do my Facebook advertising even better. I might, and the ones who say, Brian, you're a dinosaur and fuck you, then I say, please unsubscribe. Please unsubscribe. But I'm here to teach. You're here to teach. Yep. You're here to teach. And so I think I had to say that because, you know, this guy has been just the most, and he's writing the forward to my next book. So that's how important he is. That's how important he is to me. And Mike and I have become just great friends. And I come down. I live in Connecticut, so you know, he says come down. I come down. You'll be sick of me by the time. But now I've talked too much, so sorry.
Can you real quick, because the room, a lot of the room, probably 75% of them don't know who you are. You have this book, which is great. You're going to dig into that. Can you just give your 1 minute, this is who I am, this is what I've done, and then we'll dig into questions. Yeah,
and again, it's like, you know, the past is the past. You know, there are two times now and not now, so we're just going to talk about now. But if you want to hear, I helped build a company called Boardroom Incorporated. We publish newsletters and books. We were one of the iconic companies in direct marketing with a lot of companies that Jay consulted to, including mine. My mentor was Marty Edelston, who founded that business. Jay and him were also very close. And so I took that company. I did not start it. I'm not a bootstrap entrepreneur. I got to that company when I was 23 years old. It was a $5 million business. And Marty and I built it to, at its height, we were a $160 million business. All through direct marketing. Multi-channel, that's my thing. Multi-channel. Remember, the most dangerous number in business is one, right? So I started in direct mail, and just like personal one-on-one is coming back, direct mail, it's like these 27-year-olds who email me. I go, hey, you know, there's this new medium called direct mail. Have you ever heard of it? And so what goes around comes around. I'm not saying direct mail is the be-all, end-all either.
How many pieces of direct mail did you send?
Yeah, I think I calculated in the last 20 years of my career, it was 1.3 billion pieces of direct mail. I didn't lick every stamp. You know, I had some help. And then I think in my whole career, with all the impressions that I did in print, in inserts, in bank statements, and I mean, I did everything. I never met a medium I didn't like. The one thing I like to say, though, is that there were two media choices I made to go advertise. I mean, I say media choices, a place to advertise. I advertised on the back of yogurt lids once. Bad idea. It's all like sticky and shit. You're not going to sell a lot of shit when they can't read it with yogurt all over it. Bad idea, Brian. And then the other one was the back of ATM receipts. Who the fuck is walking around with an ATM receipt after they take money out and they're going to buy my product? So two really good ideas at the time. But the lesson there is never met a medium I didn't like. Because if you can reach customers, you got to meet them where they want to be met. Whether it may not be yogurt lids or ATM receipts, but it might be direct mail, it might be email, it might be Facebook, it might be at their kitchen table with an Entenmann's walnut ring.
And Brian, how many variables, both in copy, position, proposition, different lifetime value for different categories, profiles, how many do you think you've studied?
How many I've studied?
How many have you tested?
Oh, God. Yeah, so, you know, actually, that's a more impressive, you always ask the best questions. You know, we did an interview called Riffing with Socrates. He's got the Socratic method, right? So,
that was great.
That was great, yeah. So that's a great question. So me telling you I did 2 billion impressions is less impressive than if I told you that I've made 650 or 1,000 tests of A versus B, of this copy versus that copy, or this order. It applies to you guys. Don't think this doesn't apply to you. You have that, remember what Mike said before about you have these entry points that you can get into your customers, but you want to get in on that one entry point first. So you want your message to be tested to people who just need plumbing, for example. And that message should be about plumbing, not about everything that you can give them. Because if your initial message is too confusing, it's not. So that's stuff I tested all the time. So I would say the number is probably in the thousands.
But let me ask you a different question, because I think people don't realize the profound variation. In other words, when I say to somebody, because you don't know what I've been doing lately, but I've been breaking apart all the sub-impact points of things like, first of all, the revenue cycle, things like advantage, and looking at how much variation and leverage you have, not in the totality, but in the more granular elements. And people don't realize it's off the chart, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll give you guys a real granular. So let's say you've got a business that your expertise is being an electrician, and you know that area so well that you actually can be your best own copywriter, your best own person that could write that message about you being that, remember I said before, being a trusted advisor as opposed to being a commoditized vendor. Big distinction. But you're the one that could write that. Once you're in their house fixing their electricity, that's the moment of truth where then you move to the next step. So, but that initial messaging to list, this is really granular shit. It's like everything is about message to list. There are three, I mean, I have a chapter in my new book, which is what I call the 40-40-20 rule. I talked about it the last time I was here, that everything you do in marketing or business comes down to three things. 40% importance on the list that you're going after. Your dad knew that.
Yeah.
40% on the offer that you make to them eventually. Free consultation, bonus, here's a book, whatever. And then 20% on the creative and the messaging that you do. The messaging isn't half as important, meaning it's 20 versus 40, but you need to get those other things in shape first. You got to know who your list is, who you're talking to, and then you can figure out what the best offer is, and you got to do testing on that. And then we figure out the best messaging. It's not that complicated. There is some stuff in this book. I go deep in my new book about it, but I talk about this all the time. And it applies to my business when I was at Boardroom. where we were, you know, $150 million business, mailing 1 billion pieces of direct mail, and it applies to an HVAC business that has a list of 1,000 people or 500 people or 100 people, and how you're going to message them and what offers you're going to make to them, how you're going to talk to them, how you're going to sit in their kitchen. You know, I actually like the Entenmann's chocolate chip cookies a little bit better, and I like those big chocolate donuts too, unfortunately. But the walnut ring is good. But there's so many aspects to this, and it's all about relationship. But you can test everything. I think what Jay was getting at is that, you know, we're not scientists. You know, I was an English major. I went to Rutgers.
You know, it'd be great is for Jay to start with you next, and is talk about the customer service being a marketing function. And I think Jay has a theory of preeminence, and you have it of customer relationships. So Jay, if you could start talking about that customer relationship side of things.
So first of all, and not to be disrespectful, but I believe if you're going to be preeminent, you don't even refer to them as customers; they're clients. And the reason, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I know there's a guy, Dean Graciosi, a friend of ours. He does real estate education. He just calls his customers students. But don't call them. Yeah, I agree with you. 100%.
Well, here's why, and I think it has to do with psychology and perception, and it's a duality of perception. So if you look at Webster's dictionary, if I didn't say this yesterday, definition of a customer, it's someone who buys a commodity or a service. So if you call me a customer, what you're saying is, Jay, I am a commodity, I am marginalized, and I have no unique superior value. Yay! If you look at Webster's dictionary's definition of a client, basically it says someone under the care, the protection, the well-being. The entire relational status is more elevated, more relevant, more mutual in terms of responsibilities and expectations. And if you're going to try to be the most trusted advisor, you need to be able to live in your mind and convey and communicate that fact. As far as client services, what I believe you cannot accomplish is greatness without the entire ecosystem being on a unified crusade and a mission that is not at all about the generic business you're in or the products you sell, but are focused on the transformative impact they're going to have in the sustaining lives of your clients once they're installed, or once the air conditioning is performing and saving them $100 a month over the next 20 years, and that service call just put, you know, not only more comfort and balance into their home life, but just put $10,000 that they can use to buy a car or put a kid in college. I think that you have to be on a mission, and the mission has to be threefold. If you're going to be preeminent, and preeminence is a really cool concept, and as I said, Mike, I have 8 hours, and I'll be glad to give you the files, and you can put them on an inside file for your people. But it starts with an attitude that your life is service to others, and service is value creation, and value creation is very relevant. It's relative, so you have to understand definitions, but it's not just to the outside market. You have an obligation to grow and develop your team, because so many people say, I'm just giving you random thoughts, and they may not be as lucid as Brian or Mike, but so many people say, I can't hire great people. I just can't hire great people. They're lazy, they're effective, et cetera. I take everyone who says that to task and say, absolutely a lie. You either won't, who is it, Tom Phillips, you won't hire the best and cry only once, or you won't hire moldable people who could be grown and developed, or you will hire those people, but you won't invest in the growth and development. And then if people don't know what to do, we talked yesterday about greatness. If they don't know how to be great, nobody helps them be great. And even if you help them understand what greatness is, but when they try to be that, it's so awkward that they misfire, they're going to resort back to status quo. And if you don't keep supporting them, so I don't know if that's a composite answer.
There was a lot there to unpack, and I hope that you guys, I hope you got a lot of that, because that's Jay's genius. I'll add a couple of little things. I don't want this to sound like kind of woo-woo shit, but I blog every week to 9,000 people. I mean, they don't all open, unfortunately, but they should, but they don't. But the thing is, I'm a list guy. I grew up in the list business. My first job at Boardroom was actually selling the mailing list. While you were like, mixing cement, I was like sitting in a cushy office. Yeah. But I was a good list guy.
I was still a kid.
Yeah, right. Jay was a lot younger. So I talked about lists being the most important thing, right? But it's interesting that every time I write the word list, going back to what Jay said about prospects versus clients, and I start writing to my blog on Sunday morning, I always take the word list every time it shows up, like, thanks for being on my list, or I'm glad you're on my list, or if you've been on my list for a long time. I cross the word list out and I write online family. Now you say, okay, that sounds kind of woo-woo, and who gives a shit, Brian, that you have an online family? But just think about the philosophy in my head now of what Jay just said about being in service. I can much better be in service if I'm thinking about my list, these 9,000 people as family, as corny as that sounds, and I'm writing to them, thinking about them as my online family, than my list. And the same would be true for you. I'm not saying, you want to adopt every family's that you walk into their home, but you start thinking about the philosophy of this and, thinking about, what all the stuff Mike talked about this morning about relationship, so critical that it's kind of it's a real mindset. And if you can make that shift to get out of being a commoditized business, that may be the single most important thing you can do, because then you're going to separate yourself from everybody else who's not getting the training at CEO Warrior, who's not understanding commodity versus specialty. That's the differentiator, by the way. Commodity versus specialty. Making a commodity into a specialty. I mean, if you were, got a phone call tomorrow, if you have Verizon and you're getting a call about AT&T, what are you going to move to AT&T if you can move out of your contract? Probably on price, right? For the most part. Yeah. You never want to compete on price. When Mike said this morning, I hope you wrote it down, I'll pay $100 more for something the TV thing, because the guy in the store was somebody I trusted, that was gold. I mean, that sounded like just the way he wanted to diss on his sister. But that was an incredible lesson right there in commodity versus specialty. There's Dan Sullivan, who coaches entrepreneurs. He's the #1 coach for entrepreneurs in the world. And he has this line that is kind of like mostly for his millionaires and billionaires. He goes, never pay less when you can pay more, is what his thing is. But there's some real truth to that in this commodity specialty argument, and people will pay more. Why do people want to go to Nordstrom or Ritz-Carlton? And of course, their service is down on those places, and it's hurt them. It's hurt them. It used to be they were differentiated from other retail in the case of Nordstrom, or in the case of hotels at Ritz-Carlton, and they got their asses kicked because a lot of small guys came up and said, we're going to have that same philosophy, and we're going to own some kind of area, some geographic area, which is what your business is. Most of your businesses are geographic. You can just fucking own it. You can own your county. He was owning a state. He couldn't even use affiliates to go out of his territory because he was getting so good at what he was doing.
What's interesting, Brian, about that? And I think it goes into that VIP level. So you mentioned Nordstrom. So who shops at Nordstrom's? Who's never shopped at Nordstrom's? Okay, I never did either, but my wife has. And I wanted to get new jeans. These jeans are from Nordstrom's.
They're really nice.
Thank you. Thank you. They tell me they're borderline skinny jeans or something, but I don't even know. I don't even know what the hell that means. But
I don't know how you keep your hands off them.
thank you. I'm thinking the same thing. But we go there. My wife says, just try it, go there. We're in there, and all of a sudden, these people, they're pulling the pants for you. And I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. And next thing you know, they're like clipping it. And this is I got 3 pairs. They're the best damn jeans. So one is, yeah, they're indestructible, just so you know. Makes me even tougher, these jeans.
You can't beat it.
No, thank you.
And Mike, I wanted to add one thing post-discussion. You can't be great unless everyone in your company sees a connection to what they do to the outcome.
Oh, that's so huge.
And you really have to. You have to show
Write that
everyone
down.
that
Oh my
it doesn't matter what you do, the way you answer the phone, the way you care. I have always suggested, and I don't do this, so it's not for my benefit, that every person in a business gets everyone that has any client contact consultative sales training, because you're always advisors. But if everyone sees, but you know, whether it's the fact that by they paying a bill, you get a better deal and you can pass it on to the client, but they see that when they dispatch a person and he gets there or she gets there on time, you're helping. The likely outcome is a better, more comfortable, happier existence. You got to have everybody be on a crusade or a mission where no matter how far theoretically removed from the end result might be, they see relevancy, connection, and meaning that they're still part of it. The more you can achieve that, the more powerful your machine will be.
Yeah, the word that I love using is congruence. Like congruence from top to bottom, top to bottom. So, when I had boardroom, I had 100 employees or 80 employees, and the people who were on the front lines in customer service knew everything that I knew. Like I would actually sit on customer service calls just to hear what people were complaining about. And then at the customer service level, as Jay said, because they had some direct interaction, but even indirect. I mean, it's funny. Even this morning, I got an email this morning. I sell a classic book called Breakthrough Advertising by Gene Schwartz, he's one of the 6 legends that I profile in my book that you have with you. Gene Schwartz was another mentor of mine. You knew Gene. Yes. And Breakthrough Advertising is one of the greatest books ever written on the topic. I sell the book. It's a hardcover book. I sell it for $125. That's serious money for a goddamn book, right? And so I get an email today, and the guy sends me an email, and he says, he shows me a picture. He goes, I'm really disappointed. This is a collectible book. Bless you. This is a collectible book, and it's something I want to have on my shelf forever because I've always wanted a copy. And the corner of the book was all like ripped. It was like bent out of shape. Book's still readable. Mike was funny this morning. He goes, Mike says, yeah, you know what I would tell him? Read the fucking thing. Tough love. But he would have done the same thing I did, which was my first reaction, because I've been involved with everybody at my organizations that I've worked in my whole life. My first reaction was, where do I send the replacement book? And then I took it a step further, and I said, keep the book that you have and give it to somebody who calls you a mentor so you can pay that one forward, because it's still readable, right? So I did kind of a little bit of like, read it, goddammit.
But you didn't send him a patch kit.
No, I did not send him a patch kit. It was like that. Like, it's sort of like the old story. If those of you are old enough remember the old subscription offers, like when Sports Illustrated would offer a subscription and you get a free football phone on TV, right? But what if you were a subscriber for the last 2 years, and what you got 2 years ago was a piece of shit of some sort, right? And so if that person would call, I know Time Inc. did this. Time Inc. was the parent company for Sports Illustrated. Those people on the phones were instructed that if I called, the 2-year-old subscriber called up and said, you guys suck, man. The new people are getting a football phone, and all I got was a stinking T-shirt or whatever I got. If I got a CEO Warrior T-shirt, that would be good. But all I got was a stinking T-shirt, and those customer service reps were instructed to immediately send them a football phone, right? That's the mentality that we're talking about, that customer service is a marketing function, And don't you think that that football phone person from 2 years ago will now probably be a lifetime customer, or you have a better chance? Now, even if they're not, I believe that there's serendipitous benefit from that. I call it karma points. You get karma
KP
points.
for abbreviology.
Yeah. So you get karma points even if that guy who got the football phone illegitimately, so to speak, and then doesn't renew his subscription. Having that philosophy out in the universe with your staff, with your company, with a congruent mission, everything that Jay said, is going to permeate for you for a much longer period of time. So those little things really mean a lot, and customer service is a marketing function. The one thing about team, though, have you shared with them like what you did at Gold Medal? To you did a presentation at my mastermind that was off the charts. How they, Rob and Mike and Mike and Rob, how they hired at Gold Medal, which was not the norm for. Right. I mean, forget not even the norm. It was like I think that's a one of a kind hiring to kind of key into all the things that Jay was just talking about of getting a team that's going to be so aligned with your mission and your vision.
Yeah, and you know what I wanted to make sure you heard what Jay said, because it connects a dot from yesterday where he talked about consultative selling. Consultative selling is helping somebody make the best decision for themselves. That's why when you said, how do you, when you go out there, are you going to go do estimates or are you going to do a consultation? Consultation is an expert helping people make decisions versus selling is normally looked at as a forced upon. The other thing I want to share before we go into another subject is I believe you don't understand how to deliver VIP experience unless you have experienced VIP, which if any of you are in California or not, Universal Studios does a VIP experience. And I think I know they did it the best in the world, because if you look at what if every client had that VIP, I mean, we walked through our own door, and it felt real cool because everyone else was waiting in lines, and we walked through this door. There was red carpet in. There was a friendly person at the counter. We went upstairs. There was fresh mozzarella and I mean, prosciutto, and I mean, there was a movie. So if you're someone out there that's trying to sell world class, but you've never experienced world class, I would say experience. Just like Jay, I think we stayed at the Ritz-Carlton out there when we met that one time. Ritz-Carlton is very different than the Days Inn. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, you have to understand, you can adapt and adopt and extrapolate either down up or up down. Now, down up means you're going to lower yourself.
Yes.
And you can say, okay, we're going to cut costs. What can we get away with? Or you can say we're going to add leverage by increasing service, sensitivity, response, listening, tonality. There are a lot of soft skills that people do not understand have multiplier effects profound in business. My friends Stephen M.R. Covey and Greg Link are the world, if I didn't talk about this yesterday, if I did, it's worth talking about again, the world's premier experts in business trust building, and it has an enormous 300% across the board research denominated impact. It can increase your sales that much. It can increase your team loyalty that much. It can increase your profits that much. And everyone thinks that people trust them, but there are denominators. There are characteristics. And I have an interview with him, which I'll give you, and he's got 2 books. One's called Smart Trust. That's the last one. The other is Speed of Trust. The faster you build trust, the faster you close sales. The faster you build trust, the faster your team collaborates with you. I mean, it's all along. There's another one, Sally Hogshead, who has done research that being fascinating has a very positive denominator. There's another young man that I'm doing something with, and he's all about charisma. But the point is, most people do not know how to master It's not an art. It's not a science. It's the respect of listening and hearing what people say and acknowledging them. Being acknowledged is probably half of the challenge in owning the mind share, the heart, the trust of a prospect or a team member. Seriously. Well, that's a good start.
You ready for a good question?
I thought that was a good question.
That was good. You ready for a great question? So here's...
Sure.
Jay's always ready.
He was born ready.
All right. So we'll start with Brian on this one. So first, what I want to get to is, what do you think is the biggest changes in anything? Doesn't matter if it's sales, psychology. What's the biggest changes happening today, right in this moment, in the world that affects us and somehow that we should pay attention to?
Whoa.
I told you it was going to be a great question.
That is a good question.
Yeah. I mean, some of it is, so I'm not going to cop out, but I'm going to basically say that, you know, distractions are distractions. So, you know, it's a noisy world out there. And, you know, when everyone's going right, it's a good idea to try to go left when you can. You know, for example, you know, we talked about, you know, direct mail being a new medium when everybody's on email. And so, you know, I always say the least crowded inbox is the one you grew up with. Most people in this room are old enough to have a mailbox. So that's one example. But it's the distraction factor. It's like, you know, the company that I mean, I'm in a marketing conversation in my head more than anything else. I'm not going to get too worldly about this. I'm just not that smart. But when I think about marketing, I think about the people who are online marketers who do launches and they do like episodic, you know, marketing events of selling products or services, and they couldn't understand that their results were down when they were doing all of their selling right into the presidential election in 2016. You knew it was coming. You know, you could have prepared. I wouldn't have been selling into I never sold into presidential elections. And I heard that this one was a little noisier. There was a guy running who actually, you know, had some stuff to say, and that people were paying more attention to that than any sales messages you can. So the news cycles are faster. The distraction factors, you can't predict, you know, news things that you know, there's some things that you could predict, right? That you could prepare for. Don't bother people when they're going to be distracted on something else. So that's like a bigger, you know, a bigger thing. I think also that, I do think something that Mike alluded to earlier today is this dependence on, you know, digital and, you know, fast and, you know, look, speed is important, and I'm not diminishing. I got my phone glued to me a lot, and, you know, but I think that it really, you're doing a disservice, especially in a business like yours, where it's, you know, such a the personal touch is going to matter, and depending way too much on technology is certainly, you know, a big change. Yeah. I sound like, you know, an old man when I say this, but, you know, it's not like the olden days were better. It's just that you've got to be aware that distraction.
Yeah.
Is that a cop-out answer?
No, I think you're hitting it, because if you don't really, there's marketing, and then there's marketing that penetrates the noise, right? And we're dealing in a world of noise. Look at, if I just looked out in the room, you know, I bet all of you touched your phone, you know, 22 times since this morning, and half of the time you looked at it, you were upset because no one was fucking there.
Right.
How many of you did that? Be honest. Let me just check my text. Oh shit, no one's there. So.
And the three of us are way more interesting than anything on your fucking phone, so don't look at your phone.
That is true. Yeah. That is true. Jay, what do you think? Change today. What focus on today?
Let me ask you. I'm going to ask a question before I answer that. How many of you constantly monitor all your direct and indirect competition in as many forms as possible? Meaning, keep your hand up. Meaning you're on their website, you're calling in, as a prospect. You're looking at people outside your or your geography to see what they do different, how they do it. If you have people who can ask for quotes, you're doing that to see how they deal with it, and trying to either model or understand gaps. And if there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
What we call
9.
stealing smart.
Yeah, well, I would do that first. Second, my answer, thank you, and I respect those of you that do. Also, you need to study related. You might be in one kind of service, but anything else that is high ticket, critical, let's call it functionally critical to either the comfort operation of a home or a business, depending on whether you're commercial or residential, you want to study what they do, how they do it. Now, to me, issues are the following. First of all, I think there are an enormity, a daunting amount of generic competition, meaning companies. I think there are very few viable competitors once, if, and after you understand the rules of the game and you command and control. But because, I mean, anything you learn today, let's look at it. How many of your contemporaries, i.e. competitors, would even spend the time, the money, the concentration to be here? How many of them are out fishing or watching a ball game or sitting around drinking a beer? Not that that's bad, but how many want to grow by understanding wait, I believe in business. 2% of what happens to you in business are what I would call acts of God. They're beyond your control. 98% of what happens are your ability. It's the following. It's decisions you make or don't. It's actions you take or don't. It's awareness of forces, factors, elements that drive human nature, because it's all about human nature, that you either harness or let whipsaw you. But you can't do any of that if you don't first. So I teach, this is an ADD transition, but it's not really. I teach optimization, highest and best use of, and then you could fill in the blank. Time, effort, people, opportunity, access, transaction, relationships, capital, human capital, intellectual capital. But you really can't optimize if your sphere of understanding is this. You got to travel outside of your rigidity if you want advantage, and the whole game is ethical advantage. And then what I would say is, besides so many generic competitors, you've got alternatives now. And then finally, you've got the biggest enemy, which is complacency and inaction by the consumer. There's tons of things that I want and I actually need to do to my home that I can afford to do, but in the scope of all the decisions I have to make, you know, even though the roof has a leak when it rains hard and that leak is a pain in the ass, it's not raining, I got other things to do. I know it's going to cost me 20 or 30 grand to fix, and I'll get really serious about it when the rainy season comes again. But human nature is inherently curative. It is not preventative, and you have to understand the factors.
Yeah, two quick things I'll add on. Well, first of all, I just want you to understand that whole thing that Jay just said about that you took the step to be here is already makes you less commodity or not a commodity. And I also just want you to know, because, you know, we all have healthy egos, but we're also, you know, I don't think you realize that, you know, this guy is being hired by people all over the world for, I don't know, $50,000 a day to go to Japan and go all over the world to do what he's doing for you today, and that you took the step here and that he was able to get him. I'm just like, I just thought of that whole, that just got to me. So I want you to understand.
So tell him how wonderful and handsome I am.
Yeah, he's actually a pretty, and Yeah, no, and I always dressed down because I never could beat him on that. So the other thing I want to say,
And I am also very compassionate and humane.
you are.
I don't kick
He
puppy
beats
dogs.
me. You beat me up a little bit, but it's done. You know, love never leaves the room when Jay's kicking your ass, which is a good thing. I mean, he does it with Damon John, and he does it with us. So, so the other thing I want to mention, and it might not be applicable, but it could be, when Jay was talking about studying your competition, which is so critical in the world of my old world of direct marketing. I mean, I have what we call swipe files of every single great direct mail package that's almost ever been written. Like, I talk about this a lot when I write that, you know, you got to see what's been done before and then adapt it, and we always call that stealing smart. I want to add one little thing. Does everybody know what a secret shopper is? Oh, wow, awesome. How many people are you big enough? Have you ever employed a secret shopper in your business? Not that many, right? So I would put this out there. This is, it's really, Jay kind of said it, but I want to make sure that there's a real specific thing that you can do like right now, which is you get somebody, some friend in the area that you live in, to go through the gauntlet, as it were. I hate that term, but let's go through the gauntlet of your business. Go through anonymously. Not that they don't tell your customer service rep. It's sort of like the undercover boss bullshit, but it's better than
But they
that.
don't pay.
They don't pay. But yeah, right. You want to finance your secret shopper to do everything. Get some service on their home, see how the experience is with your people, have them like complain about something even if they don't have a complaint.
You know what's interesting
That's
about
really
that?
important.
And just allocate a small portion of your marketing budget towards that instead.
Yeah, I think secret shopper is huge because then you'll find the holes in your business in real time from real people, and it's not to catch people in your organization doing bad things. It's to actually become a better company.
We called it the cheapest service manager that you could have because how many of you have service managers? Raise your hand, service. How many have service managers? They did ride-alongs and stuff, right? So, like, when you're riding with a guy, does he really misbehave at that moment? Of course he doesn't. So the mystery shopper is the truest perspective. I want to just kind of add to something Jay said because I didn't want to run past it, what Jay and Brian were sharing here about intel about the competition, which is something we've done really well. Matter of fact, as I look at my cousin Jeff back there, he was one of our secret shoppers. Do you remember that, Jeff? That's a long time. I'm not sure he remembers, but he should. That was a long time ago. But intel is for strategic positioning. It's not for strategic copying. Today, a lot of people are for strategic copying. They look and they're like, oh, they're doing a $49 tune-up, I'll do a $39. No, what you want to do is look at what they're doing and say to yourself, what is completely opposite of it? What are they not saying that's compelling? And the other thing, Jay, I hope you all wrote this down. Complacency and inaction. At first I was like, oh, Jay's talking about complacency in you. No, it's complacency and inaction of your client, which means your marketing positioning has to point out, waiting for this roof, it may rain, may not rain, but it could be possibly the worst decision of your life, waiting one more day. Let me tell you why. Your pictures in the pictures in the closet, the only pictures from 1910 of your grandmother might get ruined. So I hope you guys are paying attention to this because this is so critical. So thank you for that.
Also, stealing is a felony. Stealing smart is an art.
That's great.
And I'm going to add one more thing. I worked for a band, I'm not going to mention his name because Brian knows him, for a couple of years. And it was hilarious because he would watch, he did any business that made sense. And he would, a direct response, he'd watch somebody and he would immediately try to knock it off, but he wouldn't take the time to learn what the back end was. And there's lots of different models. So when you're modeling or researching what people are doing, half of them don't really know what they're doing, but half of them have figured out either proactively or accidentally some really interesting back end and upsell and other models, and always realize one of the things, it's totally out of the question that you asked, but repurposing and redeploying buyers, prospects, people that theoretically you have not a lot of monetization other than maybe service, that you don't realize you have their trust and their respect, and even if you are not into correlated businesses or related businesses, you can partner with them, because one of the most undervalued advantages people gain and don't really optimize is trust.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
You know, I wondered Jay was talking about that. I was just sitting here thinking. First off, I was thinking it's a complete honor to be up here with you guys. Yeah, it is. It is a real honor. And as I was sitting here also thinking, I was thinking, if I look back at our road, Rob and ours road, you know, we've trained with a lot of different, I'm in Brian's highest level group, because I would never ask anybody to ever be in something I do unless I wasn't in something that someone else did. And I love Brian, and Brian's group is filled of badasses. And also I'm a believer, like, you know, when you study and you work with somebody, if you have a coach, mentor, if it's us or someone else, like, you go to the point that you either have exceeded, you have become the master of the master, and if the master is not constantly moving up on mastery, then it's time to move on. You know, I work with Jay on a regular basis with coaching because I want, as a master, to become the master of masters, and he is the master of masters. I want to give you guys, now, if you thought that question was good, this one's really good.
I don't think I even answered them. Also, just a quick quote for you. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a profound comment, because our egos actually have the capacity to compromise our achievements.
Yeah. Whoa, that was a deep one.
Say that one again. That one you write down.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what
It was brilliant. It was brilliant. All right.
It's on video. So
Yeah. Last question for you guys.
I'm going to get the JJ, and it was brilliant. We're going to play it all the time when I go to bed at night for my wife.
Right.
So last question for you guys is, and this might be, you know, this might be good or foo-foo or something, but, you know, what do you see? And Jay's working with so many people, and Brian's working with so many people. What do you see as opportunities, let's just say 5 years from now? For us in our world, I'll share it to start it off for these guys. Like, for us, most of us work with water or air. And the quality of air, will it get better or more challenged as time goes on? What do you think? It's going to get more challenged. What about the quality of water we drink? So I see these as, and what about people living longer? So I want to know from you guys, people living longer is actually a great thing, right? Which is an opportunity for you. So when you guys think into the future, or what you see that might be an opportunity, if it's virtual reality, no matter how crazy it is for them, what do you think? Who wants to start it off?
I don't, but I will. Well, I think that first of all, this is very interesting. My wife and I but mostly my wife, are donors to our local hospital, and actually life expectancy of a male is going the opposite way. It's dropping, and that's a little scary. I think that you're right. Water, quality of life it's already a dominant force with millennials, but I think it's going to become more aware, because we're going to realize that all the stuff that we want isn't going to change our life, but that the quality of our life, and it's going to be denominated in many ways. I don't know that I shared with you, because I don't do anymore except when I travel overseas, my seminars, so I don't remember all the methodologies and the suites of concepts I've created, but the 3 way to grow a business is probably the most simplistic formula for geometric growth, and I'm going to take it from there to something that's an answer. It's basically very simplistic. You add more buyers, you get them to buy more ethically, you get them to buy more often, and get more utility out of them. Utility can mean referrals, it can be more other products. Now, there's a second 3 way to grow a business, and I got this from Tom Phillips. And the first one is you penetrate a new market every year. The second one is you introduce a new product or service every year. The third one is you acquire a business that is either competitive, complementary, or a predecessor, a complement, or a whatever you would call post-acquisition product service every year on an earn-out where you're not putting money up, you're consolidating or you're bringing more reach or more whatever. And what I always tell everyone is always know what people are buying before, during, after, instead of yours. And I think Mike's onto a really great trail. The key is you got to be very careful, and I'm going to make a very bizarre, with your permission, diversion for just a minute.
Yep.
So Brian knows probably more than I. There are an enormous cadre of people out there that are advocating what they call a 10-time exponential business growth that is driven by AI, robotics, what else? Intelligence, VR, all that.
Virtual.
And I want to share a reality and an admonishment, because I've always believed this, but I verified it, and it's true because I've discussed this with experts. I'm not technological, so I have a prejudice, not against it, but it's just intimidating. But here's the truth. Everybody who recommends that that's your best growth process, it doesn't tell you the downside. Gary Halbert used to say, what was he call it, the dark side of, so here's the reality. You got to figure out what this moonshot machine's supposed to do. Then you got to find a bunch of different experts in each category who can put it together, who very probably have never worked together, who don't know the industry, who are going to have a prejudice towards different technology or services that may or may not talk to each other. It's going to be like creating your own custom home, meaning it's going to take longer, cost more, and have a lot more headaches. When it's first, all along, you're going to have to run parallel universes. You're going to have to fund all that. That it is going to divert from your operating business, or it's going to require a loan, or it's going to require diluting your ownership. Now, when the first version is done, it probably is going to be crap. So you're going to have the same system running somewhere else. You're going to have all these experts controlling your life. Next, when you finally get it perfected and you have your 10x exponential moonshot machine, guess what? It is useless unless the benefit it produces can be conveyed to the market. And guess what that requires? Marketing, trade shows, PR, i.e. expense. Now, I want you to be aware that there's nothing wrong with that ultimately, but there is a lot of very powerful talk about it from people we know. There's not a lot of proof of concept, but here's what you need to know. You all have within your current business as many as 50 upside leverage points in the revenue system, or the revenue system you could have that will cost you as close to nothing, that will have as close to zero risk, and each one can give you another 5, 10, 15%. And that cash flow can fund the subsidy that you will absolutely incur trying to figure out your 10x moonshot. And I just want to make that point because I'm very passionate about that reality.
Yeah, I'm glad Jay answered that question first, because now I can answer it, or at least I can add on to a little
disagree?
bit. I don't disagree, and you know, I fear always of being grandpa at the picnic and saying the whiz bang is not always the best thing to go after, the shiny object, the new thing. And Jay said it much more eloquently than I could. One of my favorite business books of all time is a book that Jay wrote, and the title of that book is Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got.
They all got that book yesterday.
You all got it. Okay, so and I keep it on. I have 100 copies of it in my storage locker and on my shelf, and I give it out to people. And then I get it when I go in. I don't do a lot of consulting one-on-one, but if I did, the first thing I do, spinning off of what I've learned from Jay and what he just shared, is something I call assessing your assets. You've got to know everything you've got.
And he's talking a lot about intangible, not tangible.
Yeah, some of them are tangible. You might have, in the case of, let's say you wrote a special report on heating and air conditioning at one point. That's an asset because it's a book or a booklet or something you could give away to potential new clients. But there's also all the intangibles, as Jay said, of understanding the marketplace. I mean, I've spoken internationally, not as much as Jay, but when I go international and I speak, the first thing I say, an interpreter or no interpreter, I don't know how they interpret it, but I say it's the old Vince Lombardi quote. You know, he said, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing, although it's actually someone else who said it before him, but he gets credit. I say marketing isn't everything, it's the only thing. And it's the old story, if you build it, they'll come. Bullshit. Bullshit. You've got to understand everything you own, everything you can own, everything you can affiliate with, all the stuff that Mike talked about this morning. And that stuff is not going away. I don't care what new technology comes along, the fundamentals will stay. I did there's a chapter in my new book, I think it's chapter 2, and it's the importance of original source. And I talk about
I love that one.
like where babies come from, right? You got to know. Now that's not because I want to take a stroll down memory lane with you and tell you about all the great direct marketers like I tell you in that book and how they were better than today's marketers. Not at all. Not at all. What Mike said before, I spend well over $100,000 a year on my current education. I probably spent over $1 million in my life as well to be in rooms of people who are way smarter than me, who understand the new technology, because I'm like Jay. I'm not a Luddite, but I certainly do not want to learn how to do like the intricacies of how to do a Facebook video. I don't give a shit. But I want to know how it works. I want to know the what. This is a good distinction from Dean Jackson. And he's spoken to Mike's groups before. You want to know the what and the who before you know the how. You want to know the what and the who before you know the how. And that's not going away. And what I mean by that, like Mike comes to my high-end marketing group, my mastermind. And I bring in these guest speakers. I brought Jay in. I want to know what the what is. Like, what's the thing we should be looking at? It was Facebook. Maybe it's YouTube. Maybe it's, Instagram. Maybe it's direct mail again. Whatever. That's the what. And then once you know the what, how am I going to get it done? Who's the who that's going to do it, as opposed to me feeling like I have to do everything. And as a business owner, that's an important distinction. And I don't think whiz-bang technology is going to make the how easier to do. There's no doubt about that. I love that. I'm hiring somebody to do that. As Dan Sullivan says, he's the one that said why pay less when you can pay more. He's a big proponent of why do something that's not that you can, if you have a problem and you can write a check to assess that problem, you no longer have a problem.
All right. Yeah. And Jay, we'll finish with give any last concept or thought you want to give. Then Brian, any last concept or thought, and then we'll.
I will. And I also have a question. Who's the gentleman that gave me his card that I wanted to talk to from Los Angeles yesterday? Okay, I found one of my cards. It's beat up, but I'm going to have him pass them back to him. Thank you. And tomorrow, if you don't hear from me in the afternoon, if you're home, text me because I'm only home for 2 days. Back in the back. Is that who? Is that you're the one? Yeah. See, way back. Don't keep it.
Send it all the way back.
Come on.
They're going to sell that card now over
Pass
here.
the card down. Come on. Okay, here's mine, and it's a quote, and it's not original. I think it was Bob Proctor. Most people in business struggle silently with the wrong question. And the question they struggle with is, am I worthy of this goal? Can I really grow my business 5 times, 10 times? Can I really create this asset that people will buy? Can I really compete and make margin and not just, trade dollars? Can I figure a way to get the business working harder and harder for me? Can I, can I grow it? Can I pilot both expansive growth, both in markets and in product service categories? And people all day long allow huge segments of their energy and their concentration to divert to that which is really, really shameful, because when you get a better context of what is possible from time, effort, access, people, dollars, communications, the ability to comprehend and communicate benefit and value as defined in the market, the right question to ask is not, are you worthy of the goal, but is this limited goal worthy of me? It's a whole different context. That's my conclusion.
Yeah, there's so many things. I'll leave you with, because we always think about look, we're all. I hate to say this, but it's absolutely true. We're all here to make more money. In terms of, we're here to do a lot of good stuff on the earth, and if we have more money, we can give away more money, and we can be, benevolent. And look, there are a lot of people who want to be billionaires. I love, the Bill Gates and Warren Buffett philosophy is that if I'm a billionaire, I can live on this much of what I earn, and I can give the rest away. So this is not, as a self-proclaimed marketing whore, I love marketing, but the people who come to my mastermind group, ultimately they want to make more money. However, having said all that, and so you don't walk away thinking, oh, that Brian Kurtz is a marketing whore, I would say that, and what I said before when I chimed in about that customers refund transactions, they don't refund relationships. I would say that the spin-off of that, and the thing I'll leave you with, is everything you do, even though you have to make more money, money is important, because money doesn't buy you happiness, it buys you freedom, and then freedom is everything. But everything is not a revenue event that you do, but everything is a relationship event.
This is a total and absolute irrelevant observation, but it's sort of interesting. I was in Omaha 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and I was working with one of the Berkshire companies. And the first thing you guys do, because it's probably just a protocol, is they drive you to see Warren Buffett's house. And it's basic. Yeah. It's nothing. It's a little house. Yeah. And he's had it for 50 years, he said. He bought it for 50 grand. And he said it's nicely appointed, but it's just a basic house. But if you think about him, he is all about sustaining value, isn't he? Mm. And what is sustaining value?
Value versus making money, right.
Yeah, that sustaining value-based businesses will endure. But opportunistic, short-term. Okay, good. Well, it's been a pleasure for me.
Everybody, let's...
Yeah. No, that's it. I just thank you for being so attentive.
Yeah, same here.
Let's hear it for Jay Abraham and Brian Kurtz.